Welcome to Running Stronger. My name is Will Frantz. In this episode, I'm going to talk about foot strength and foot strengthening things and how to make your foot move a little better. Now, if you are new to this, you've done no foot strength things, you wear shoes all the time, you never go around barefoot, then the latter half of this is probably not worth your time. You'd be better off just like buying a pair of Vivos or Xero shoes or whatever, or spending more time in socks, and that is probably, almost certainly, going to be a better strategy to build some foot strength. However, if like me, you do spend a lot of time, you can do a lot of these physical therapy-ish exercises that I'm going to talk about in this episode, and you still have some foot issues, then some of the more detailed, complicated movements at the end might be helpful to you. Now, if you would benefit from watching this on video, which you really might, some of the ends of this, or some of even the middle of this, can be weird to describe, then I'm going to include a video to the YouTube, or a link to the YouTube video in the show notes. But if you have a pretty good eye for like visual space for anatomy and descriptions of exercises, or you've seen me do these in the past, then I'd love to just have you listen. But either way, whatever's best for you, you have options. And let's talk about foot strength stuff. Foot strength is one of those things that probably just doesn't matter a lot for most people. I've heard a lot of people say things like your feet need to be strong, etc., and that is arguably true. It is the base of support to the ground, but there's also a lot of myths and obsession in certain, circles about foot strength and what your feet look like and what they should look like and how they should move and etc., right? Like we do with everything. We get too focused on the minutia rather than just fucking training. When we look at something like foot strength, it probably just doesn't matter unless they're real weak, you have an injury or coming back from an injury, or you've been really injured in the past and we're starting to see some negative effects from that injury down the line, or you have a big imbalance side to side. If any of those things are true, then we might want to spend some time looking at foot strength. Now, if you really want to get strong in your feet, one of the best things you could do is walk around barefoot a lot more. We'll get into this more in a second, but whenever I take a step, I put my entire body weight through my foot, and it has to do work. This is why when you have someone who spends their entire life in more supportive shoes, and then at the age of 30 or 35, they put on barefoot shoes like Vivo Barefoots or Xeros or Vibram 5 Fingers, they often end up with sore feet because their foot has not done that much work fucking ever, and as a result, it is sore. Just like if you've never done bicep curls and then you do a bunch of bicep curls, your biceps are going to be sore. Same thing with your feet. So if you walk around barefoot a decent amount, or in very thin-soled shoes, and if you need something that's kind of acceptable for work, there's a company called Camper. I have no affiliation, but it is an option. Then that could be a really good way to strengthen your feet. But aside from this just being incredibly weak, you'll also see things like exercises for your feet that are designed to reconnect you to the muscles of your feet. And a couple of those, we're going to use a box, and I could be doing this barefoot, but I really don't think anybody needs to be staring at my bare foot to get the point here, so we're just going to do this in socks. So one of them would just be towel drags. So imagine I have a towel underneath in front of my foot, and then I drag backwards. So my foot is just either on the ground or in this case on a box. And then I start on the edge of a towel and then I curl back in order to bunch the towel up underneath the arch of my foot. And once I've bunched up enough of the towel, then I will restart. And if I wanted to make this more difficult or more challenging, I would put a weight on the end of the towel. So say I have a towel that goes out to here, I'd put a 5-pound weight or a soup can or something, and then drag the towel with the weight on the end to make it more difficult. And that is a good exercise that we can start to use to get some connection back to the muscles of your foot. It's probably not going to make it a lot stronger because, again, every step you take, body weight through your foot, but it can reconnect it if your foot is just stiff as fuck and won't move. Another thing that can be really useful is an exercise called short foot, where we have your foot like this, and you have this first, like the ball of your foot, and then your heel, and you try to bring together the ball of your foot and your heel by flexing the muscles in the arch of your foot, and then relax. What usually happens if people start with this is they will curl their toes, but what we really want to do is use the muscles of the arch of our foot and keep our toes fairly relaxed. This can take a while to learn. The first time I did it, my foot either turned into this, like I curled my toes, or it didn't move at all. What we're really trying to engage the muscles here in the arch of your foot, almost like you're trying to pick up a coin, pick up a penny, pick up a quarter with the arch of your foot, not with your toes, but with the muscles here. And that exercise is called short foot, and it's another like fairly standard PT exercise for rehab from things like ankle strains or foot injuries or whatever. And that is another thing we can do to like reconnect to the muscles of the foot and get it moving in a way that we want it to move. But much like the towel thing, it's probably not going to make it that much stronger as a whole. In order to do that, like any other muscle, we need to load it with weight beyond what it can currently handle, and that's how we're going to make it stronger. So we need to load it with a weight in a position, or in the position we want it to work, beyond what it's currently doing, right? So again, if you are currently wearing like very supportive shoes, running shoes, Hokas, etc., all around all day, then simply going barefoot for chunks of your day could be a good start. And that can be a really good way to start to build some foot strength. But say we're already there, like I've spent a lot of my many years now, I think I started mostly in college, in the like barefoot shoe direction. And I am less in that cult now, but I still do spend a lot of my time barefoot or in like less supportive shoes. So they're not really doing fucking much for me as far as building strength. It's a good thing to keep doing so I don't lose it, but it's certainly not going to build much more. Now, if we look at my feet, it's tough to see, especially on like a black background, which probably wasn't my best choice. I should have worn lighter socks, but my left foot wants to cave in more than my right foot. And that's because I ruined my left ankle in college. So it, instead of wanting to be here, where they'd be more symmetrical, it wants to cave in a little bit. And that is probably responsible for some various aches and pains I've had. It shifts my gait a little bit. It doesn't allow me to create as much force through the foot. And I haven't really thought about it for the better part of 10, 15 years because it hasn't been much of an issue. But in the past few years, I've like increased my running volume and like been doing more training. I am starting to notice some things like pain here in like this part of the ball of my foot and some just like hip mechanic stuff that if I made my foot work a little more like it's supposed to work, at least more like the other side, probably end up with some fewer problems, right? So this doesn't need to be an obsession, doesn't need to be a primary focus, but I am going to start adding some movements into like warm-up routines that will help to make the foot stronger over time. So if we're going to do this, we kind of have to understand how the foot works, because again, we have to load it in ways that it actually is going to do what we want it to do, right? So let's look at two different things. When we land, either when we're walking, right? When we walk and we make contact with the ground, the foot is supinated, which means the arch is kind of up and it's turned out a little bit to the side. And when the foot is supinated, we can consider this like a receiving or a slowing down or an eccentric position of the foot, depending on what fancy words we want to use. And as we land, the foot is going to be in that position. Now, as we step through, the foot is going to pronate. The arch is going to collapse, the knee is going to drive over it, and it is going to create force in order to propel us forward. And if we don't have really good access to either of those positions, or we can't switch between those positions, we might, not necessarily, but might end up with problems. So if we're going to train this, we want to make sure where we are. If you have really flat feet, we probably need to build the arch back by focusing on creating some supination. And again, we might need to connect with those muscles first through some exercises like short foot or towel drags. And if you have a really high arch and your foot doesn't want to supinate, then we don't have to do that shit. It's already there. We just want to make sure that the foot moves into pronation. So a couple examples of this, like ways that we might stress this. If we have already done our short foot and we can connect to the muscles and we can get it to move, etc., and we're doing some barefoot or like low support shoe walking, then one way we could load it would be to take something like a plate and put it on the ground, and we can put the ball of the foot on the edge of the plate or another like elevated surface, and probably shouldn't be that high off the ground, right? Because one thing that can happen here is as you get tired, the heel drops down, and if you're on like a 45-pound plate or a big stack, you might not notice it's dropping until your calf is already really well stretched and we're losing the position. If I have something like a 10 plate, or even like a 2.5, like one of those change plates we can see up on the rack, then it's more likely that I'm going to get more like immediate feedback if my heel dips. So set up here, set up in a split stance, make sure my heel is up off the ground, and then my foot is naturally going to end up in this supinated position. If not, it's just going to like fall and collapse, right? So I want to push up, create the stability through the arch of the foot, and then we're just going to lower into this split squat in a really slow eccentric. Because again, the supinated position is more of an eccentric. It's more of a receiving motion. So if we end up here, get in a good split stance position, and just lower under a lot of control, make the foot work into that supinated position, then we'll press back up to top. And again, nice and slow, controlled, focus on the eccentric, make the foot keep stable in that position, and then drive back up to top. And the eccentric should probably be like 5 to 10 seconds. We really want to focus on that position where the foot has to maintain that arch, maintain that supination under load. And if we want to load it more than just body weight, then we can hold a dumbbell in each hand, and that is going to allow us to add extra weight. Now, if you have a really high arch, we probably want the opposite treatment, right? Like we don't need to do an eccentric thing to like stress supination because the foot is already too fucking supinated. So if we are looking at creating some pronation, things that we want to do is, one, make sure that we're keeping what we'd call like a tripod foot. We want to keep contact with heel, this outside edge of the ball of the foot, or like your fifth met head, and the inside edge of the ball of the foot, first met head. We want to keep contact through all those 3 points really solidly as we go through pronation. What will often happen is when we work on pronation, you have a really like arched foot. Let's say my arch doesn't move and I'm trying to pronate, we're just going to lift, right? And the outside edge of my foot is going to lift up. I'm going to lose contact there. And it can feel like I'm pronating because my arch is coming down. What's actually happening is my foot kind of turns out, my knee comes in, and it just caves. It doesn't collapse, it doesn't create force, it doesn't move, it just falls inwards, it tips. So what we actually want to do is keep that pressure, and then we can hold on to something for balance. Then we can just drive the knee forward over the toes, like in line with that second toe. And as I drive the knee forward, the arch should naturally collapse, and then we'll just move back and forth. You call this like a low lunge, like, or knee, I don't know what we want to call this, right? Foot pronations, good enough. But drive the knee forward until the arch collapses, and then come back so it naturally returns to supination. And if your foot really wants to stay in the supinated arch position, this might be a lot of work. Like it might be really difficult to get the foot to collapse while maintaining that tripod position of the foot. It might be a real pain, right? But hold on, drive here. It can even be helpful to like have something to drive your knee towards, to have a goal. So like you can hold onto a box or a wall, and then once we're here, we can drive the knee forward towards that box or wall, and then come back. If that doesn't seem to be working for whatever reason, we can do the opposite of what we're doing with the supination. I'm going to keep contact with those 3 points on an elevated surface. So my heel has contact on this elevated surface. The ball of my foot has contact on the other elevated surface. And then
my foot is like a bridge because there's a gap in the middle. And it just gives me space to collapse into. So I can set up again in like this split stance position with my arch of my foot floating and my tripod foot in contact. And then I'm going to lower, and it doesn't need to be a slow eccentric. Again, we're not stressing the supinated position here, so you can just lower kind of under control and then push back up to top. And as I push back up, I want to keep the contact with the outside and inside of the ball of my foot and my heel, keep that tripod foot, and then try to get the arch to fall into that space and create force. Back in, and then in and create force. If we want to load this, it can be really helpful to hold a dumbbell in this like opposite hand. So if my left leg is forward, and hold it in my right, and that's almost going to pull the foot this way and allow that force to create maybe even a little easier. So again, if we're looking at like foot strengthening, it is probably not the like secret sauce for most people. It is not magic. It is probably not going to change the way you run or lift or move or like make your life a million times better. But it can be helpful if you have injuries or you've had injuries in the past when you see a big imbalance or something just seems to be going on, right? And whenever we're looking at rehab, it can be really helpful to do these like very low load exercises at the beginning, like short foot and towel drags in order to connect to those muscles. But at some point, we have to scale it. We have to actually challenge the muscles we're trying to work, or else they're not going to get any fucking stronger. So if we just keep doing the short foot and the towel drags, we can do that all day long, but it's not really going to make the foot any stronger. We have to figure out a way to load it. So if we can add a little bit of load, or in some cases a lot of load, in ways that will actually put us into the position that we're trying to be, then that's probably what we're looking for.